Fellas, today we're going to be doing a tier list of journalists or reporters or interviewers, whatever you want to call them, in MMA. Now, this isn't specific to the UFC, so I am going to be going out kind of outside of just the UFC, but basically the big kind of reporters in the UFC or around MMA. I'm not going to include every single one of them because there's so much, but I'm going to be including the ones that are quite common or quite popular. So so S tier is going to be like, you know, they're the best journalists that you can possibly have, and then D tier is going to be like, get out the UFC, you fatty. Starting off with the first reporter or journalists, I'm going to go Oscar Willis. Now, this guy controls the Mac Life, which is funded by McGregor. You've probably seen him at pretty much every single press conference. And I'm going to put him in B tier. No, I'm going to put him in C tier. I feel like the questions that he asks are really basic. It's just the same thing. I mean, sometimes he can get information quickly. I mean, off Dana White, so in a post-fight press conference, he can be quite useful. But in a standard press conference, he's just asks basic questions. One thing I do like is the pub talk thing, but at the same time I don't. I like the concept that he's able to interview fighters like Dan Hooker, Conor McGregor a lot of the time as well, so he's always able to interview fighters, but he just seems a bit weird. If you watch his pub talks where he gets drunk, he goes really weird. I saw a pub talk that he did with Tom Aspinall and Dan Hooker, and the guy started shouting at a child. He just seems like a bit of a weirdo. Like, there was a story of Arnold Allen kind of having a fight with women in a bar, and I feel like Oscar Willis is the type of guy to do that. I don't know, he just gives... I don't know, he's a bit strange, but as a reporter, he's alright, asks pretty basic questions, bit of a weird guy, but he is able to get some interviews fast, he's able to get information pretty quickly and up to date, so for that reason, I'm going to put him in C tier. He's not the best, I wouldn't be bothered if he left, but he can get pretty good information out there, so Oscar Willis or the Mac Life, I'll put him C tier again. Sometimes when he does the pub talks, or not even just the pub talks, just standard interviews, they can be good. I know he did one with Tom Aspinall not long ago, which was pretty good as well, and he's done a few others with other fighters. So I'd say on a general basis, he's all right. I wouldn't really choose to watch him. I'd put him in. In fact, no, I'll put him in B tier. He's a bit of a weirdo, but he's all right. Next, reporter or journalist, Pink Suit Man. He's going in A tier, man. I'm sure he's probably never watched a fight in MMA in his life. He kind of just seems... He looks like Jake Paul's manager. It looks like he's never watched an MMA fight in his life. He's been there for the McGregor press conference and the Colby Covington press conference. I'm going to put him in A tier purely because he's got some of the best moments. He knows how to rile people up. He only really tends to be there when it's kind of like the big trash talkers like Colby and Conor McGregor. So for that reason, I mean, you can't be an S tier. But just because he got some of the best moments, you know, that moment with McGregor, and then what did Colby Covington call him? I forgot what he called him. I forgot what he called him, but the whole situation with Covington. So for that reason, I've got to put him in A tier. I wish we saw him rile up fighters more. I kind of like it when a reporter doesn't hold back on fighters, because all the reporters, like most of the journalists, it's just the same questions over and over again. They kind of cower to fighters. And the thing I like about the Pink Suit Man, I don't even know his name, that's just what he's known by. But one thing I like about the Pink Suit Man is he doesn't really cower away from fighters. He'll ask the questions, and he always gets good moments. So for that reason, I wish we saw him more. And the fact that I wish you saw him more, you've got to put him in A tier. He's an interesting guy. Can be a bit annoying sometimes, but I'll put him in A tier. We need to see more. He's probably been banned, hasn't he? He's probably been banned from the UFC for all the riling up fighters that he's done, but yeah, I'll put him in A tier. Next up, we've got the Schmo. I'm going to put him in C tier. Again, I just feel like he's a bit of a basic interviewer. The only thing that makes people watch him is he puts on some annoying voice. That's the only thing he does. He thinks if he can put on some annoying voice and pull weird facial expressions, it's going to get people to watch longer. Apart from that, if you really break down the questions, he's just basically Oscar Willis point two. No, maybe not, because he doesn't even really... I mean, he goes to different fighters and interviews the fighters in the gyms, but they're just really boring. I've never wanted to go, okay, the Schmo was uploaded, let me go and watch it. Seems like a nice guy, but just because you're putting on some weird voice and you're pulling weird facial expressions and you look like a weirdo, doesn't mean you're a good reporter. So I'm going to put him in C tier. Overrated. If he had the personality of every other reporter, he'd probably be in D tier, but I guess he does kind of have something going for him. You know, he's somewhat popular around MMA fighters. I know he's allowed in a few gyms and stuff to interview them, so pretty quick, pretty self-explanatory. I'm putting him in C tier. Basic questions. Next one, we've got Nina Drama. Now, I'm going to put her in A tier as well. Yeah, I'll put her in A tier. And that's because she, like I said, she's different to all the other interviewers. Now, I will say though, her comment section's a bit weird. I've seen a couple of the comment sections on her posts. like whether it be Instagram or even just a standard interview, and they look like the most women deprived people on YouTube. But I will give her props. She does do the most weirdest but entertaining interviews with the fighters, asking questions that no other reporters asked, and I don't know, it just seems they're pretty fun at the interview. So I'll put her in A tier. I think she's paid by the UFC to promote Power Slap, because she's done so many Power Slap promotions on her page, and she's also shown up on the community tab on the UFC page. But yeah, the whole thing she's got going with Sean Strickland, she's the best at interviewing Sean Strickland. That some of them, there's so many funny moments with Strickland on the channel, and then even just other fighters like John Jones as well that she interviewed. I don't know everything. The Hamzat Chimaev one as well that blew up the other day, or last week, whenever it was, whenever UFC 294 was. But I'll put her in A tier. She's definitely not boring. She's one of the best. I don't know how she manages to get all these interviews. I don't know how she kind of came in the interview kind of scene anyway. Came out of nowhere, but yeah, I can't lie. The whole thing she's got going with Strickland, yeah, pretty good. I'll put her in A tier. Not S tier, because again, she doesn't interview fighters that often. It's like one, maybe two interviews a week. But yeah, she's, you know, good report. I don't know what to call her. She's a content creator. She's not really a journalist, but I'll put her in A tier. Next one. Nick Pete and Adam Catterall. Now, these guys are the TNT Sports kind of guys. They work at TNT Sports, or used to be BT Sports. I'll put them in... They don't really interview fighters much. They only really interview British fighters like Arnold Allen, Nathaniel Wood, Tom Aspinall. I've never seen them interview a fighter outside of the UK, besides like Marcin Tybura. So for that reason, I can't really put them anything above B tier. The reason I will put them in B tier is I used to like the preview show they did on BT Sports, but they've stopped doing that now. But for journalists, I kind of find them interesting. They've got good humour, especially with other fighters from the UK. Again, like I said, I've never really seen them interview or kind of journal a fighter outside of the UK, which is a bit weird. So I'll put them in B tier, and the reason I've categorised them together is because they're always together. No matter where they are, no matter what work they're doing, Nick Pete and Adam Catterall are always together. I could have also put Bisping in there, but he's always doing commentary. I won't really call Bisping a journalist. So Adam Catterall and Nick Pete, if you're in the UK and you watch TNT Sports pretty regularly, you'll know who they are. Yeah, I don't really like... I like Adam Catterall more than Nick Pete. Nick Pete just seems like anything to do with Scousers he likes. I'm pretty sure it might have been him or another person at TNT Sports that said Molly McCann has some of the most heart in the sport of MMA. She has got so much heart, even though she got submitted by a woman with a record of like 10 wins and 8 losses. Adam Catterall, or aka Voldemort, yeah, I don't mind him. Pretty, you know, they've got good interviews with British fighters. They kind of, you know, they've got decent humour. Even the Dana White interviews they do, but that's not really their choice. It's because they're paid by TNT Sports, or whatever you want to class them as. I'll put them in B tier. Not one of the best or anything, but you know, they're all right. Next interviewer or reporter, John Morgan. Do 10 push-ups, John. Not my fault you ate your overlong. I'm gonna put him in D tier. He's basically the Schmo, but with the most. He's so boring. I'm sorry, he's so boring, he's John Morgan. He's just the most... I don't know how he always gets the first question at every post-fight press... Not post-fight press conference, just press conferences in general. He must be queuing out there for, like, ages. But yeah, he's always got the first question, and it's just the most boring questions. What do you feel like you're going to do on Saturday night? What advantages do you feel like you've got over the other opponent? Nobody came to see that at press conferences. And he's also one of those journalists that asks Dana White about the question, like the most boring questions, like, Dana White, how do you feel to be back in Boston? Dana White, how do you feel to be back here? Dana White, it's just always asks Dana White questions as well. And then when he actually asks fighters the questions, they're the most boring and bland questions there is. John Morgan, the only good like moment that John Morgan's had is when Colby Covington roasted him, and that weren't even John Morgan that did that. That was out of Colby Covington. So I'm putting him in D tier. He's basically just the Schmo, but instead of going to fighter gyms and interviewing them, he only just shows up at press conferences, and he doesn't even have any personality to him either. So I'm gonna put him in D tier. He's just there. He's just there. I mean, I haven't included that other Donny. I forgot what he's called. He's like that guy with a beard, and he's American, and I think he's called John or something like that. I don't know what he's called. But yeah, D tier for the fatty. And then the final one, the most popular one, Ariel Helwani. I kind of want to put him in S tier. I also want to put him in A tier because, let's be honest, he does get regular interviews with a lot of fighters. So what's the word? Like, consistency-wise, he's easily an S tier. And popularity-wise, he's an S tier. He's been around, he's an OG. But the fact that he's got so much bias, I'm going to put him in B tier. I mean, he had one the other day with Chael Sonnen, and I'm not saying that was Helwani's fault. But I'd say he's not really scared to ask questions. It's just, it feels like with a fighter, if Helwani likes the fighter, it's going to be a good interview. If he likes the fighter and he has good chemistry with the fighter, it's going to be a good interview. But if he doesn't like the fighter, like Chael Sonnen, or there's a few other fighters like Jamal Hill that he doesn't tend to like, and he always cowers away from questions. He always just tries to find a way to kind of slate the UFC. He's got so much bias in his interviews, and it's pretty obvious. So for Ariel Helwani, I'm putting him in the middle. Consistency-wise, you know, S tier. Popularity-wise, S tier. And I guess the fact that he's not necessarily afraid of, you know, asking deep questions to some fighters, I'll put him in S tier as well. But the fact that he's got so much bias, and he just does look annoying, doesn't he? Like, if Helwani was trying to pressure me and I saw that face, I'd want to punch him too. He's got a really punchable face, but I'm going to put him in B tier. And yeah, that's the reporters. We've got nobody in S tier because none of them really fit the criteria of consistency, entertainment, and, you know, not carrying away from deep questions. So none in S tier, but yeah, that's my. I've missed a few out as well. I'm not including people like Helen Lee or whatever she's called. So this is just my list of reporters from A tier to D tier. Let me know if you agree. Let me know if I missed out anyone that should have been in the list, like any really popular or, you know, really obvious reporters. But that's my list for journalists. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching.